Prague, May 27, 1942. 10:32 in the morning, a black Mercedes convertible rounds a sharp hairpin bend on Holešovic Street. The sun is out. The city looks almost peaceful. In the back seat sits the most dangerous man in Nazi-occupied Europe, a tall, blonde officer in full SS uniform, riding with the top down, no armored escort, no heavy security detail, just arrogance, just complete, absolute confidence that no one in this crushed and broken city would dare touch him. He was wrong. Two men are waiting at that curve. One raises a Sten submachine gun. It jams. Not a single bullet fires. For one heartbeat, the mission is dead. The target is right there, close enough to see the silver insignia on his collar, and the weapon is completely useless. Then the second man steps forward. He pulls the pin on a modified anti-tank grenade. He throws it. The explosion tears through the rear of the car. Shrapnel rips through the officer's body, puncturing his diaphragm, cracking his ribs, and driving fragments of the car's own upholstery deep into his spleen. The most feared man in the Third Reich stumbles out of the wreckage. He fires his pistol at the assassins. He chases one of them down the street, bleeding, before collapsing to his knees. 8 days later, he is dead. His name was Reinhard Heydrich, and this is the story the Third Reich never wanted the world to know. You are watching WW Two-Time Tales, where we go deeper than the textbooks, behind the classified files, and into the moments that shaped the modern world. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell. Every single upload on this channel tells a story that deserves to be heard. Don't miss a single one. To understand why the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich sent shockwaves through the entire Nazi command, you need to understand who he actually was, not just as an officer, but as a human being, because this is where the story gets complicated. Heydrich was born in Halle, Germany, on March 7, 1904. His father was a composer and opera director. His mother was a pianist. Young Reinhard grew up surrounded by music, culture, and artistic ambition. He was an exceptional violin player, skilled enough that even as one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany, he would perform private concerts in his home. He was also a gifted athlete, fencer, swimmer, competitive equestrian, the picture of physical perfection that Nazi ideology demanded. But underneath the polished surface was something darker and far more complicated. In 1930, Reinhard Heydrich attended a rowing club ball in Kiel and met a young woman named Lena von Osten. She was sharp, deeply political, and already a committed Nazi Party follower. She had attended her first rally in 1929. They fell hard for each other, almost immediately. Within weeks, they were engaged. There was just one problem. Heydrich was already involved with someone else. He had been seeing the daughter of a prominent shipyard director for 6 months, and she had expectations of marriage. When Heydrich chose Lena and ended the other relationship, a naval court of honor convened to judge his conduct, with the verdict dismissed from the German Navy for conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. It was the humiliation that launched a monster. Cast out of the military career he had built his identity around, Heydrich was recruited by Heinrich Himmler into the SS in 1931. And everything changed. The man who had been thrown out of the Navy for romantic misconduct would, within a decade, become the architect of the Holocaust and the most feared intelligence chief in all of Nazi-occupied Europe. His friend and colleague Walter Schellenberg later wrote, Heydrich's only weakness was his ungovernable sexual appetite. To this, he would surrender himself without inhibition or caution. The calculated control which characterized him in everything he did left him completely. A man of extraordinary talent, a man of extraordinary cruelty, and a man driven at every moment by a need to prove himself to a world he believed had wronged him. By 1939, when the Second World War officially began on September 1st, Heydrich had built one of the most sophisticated and terrifying intelligence and security apparatuses in human history. As the head of the Reich Main Security Office, the RSHA, he commanded the Gestapo, the SD, and the criminal police under a single unified structure. His superior, Heinrich Himmler, controlled the broader SS network, but operationally the machine that kept 80 million people living in fear ran through Heydrich's desk. Adolf Hitler called him the man with the iron heart. The Gestapo, the Geheime Staatspolizei, was the secret political police at the center of this machine, and it operated according to a terrifying principle. It answered to no law, no court, and no oversight body except the Nazi Party itself. Gestapo officers did not need a warrant to read your mail, enter your home, or listen to your telephone conversations. There were no limits. None. When the Gestapo arrived in a newly occupied city, it rarely announced itself loudly. A few plainclothes officers, a commandeered building, a new sign on a door, a car parked outside a prison that had been quietly taken over. Within hours, an entire city understood what had happened and what it meant. Here is what no history book fully prepares you for: what it was actually like inside a Gestapo interrogation room. Documented survivor accounts from the Klapperfeld police prison describe exactly what happened behind those walls. A prisoner was brought in and seated across from an officer at a desk. A secretary sat nearby, typewriter ready to transcribe whatever the session produced. Behind the prisoner stood two additional officers. One survivor recalled, "If I did not immediately answer the questions put to me, the two Gestapo men immediately beat me. It happened several times that after an interrogation was over and I was taken to my cell, another Gestapo man came and started another interrogation, accompanied by blows and kicks, so that I bled." These sessions were structured in three escalating levels. First, insults, threats, slaps, kicks, painful restraint, and blackmail using the names of suspected accomplices. Second, beatings with rubber hoses, choking and hanging prisoners with their heads tied downward. And third, full instruments of torture combined with parading family members in front of the prisoner. Sleep deprivation was standard. Prisoners were kept awake for days, denied water, forced to stand until their legs gave out. Officers worked in rotating shifts so the pressure never let up. And alongside the physical assault came the psychological warfare, the twisted offers, the false promises, the threats against children and spouses that may or may not have been real. It did not matter whether the threat was real. The Gestapo understood that fear of what might happen is often more powerful than the thing itself. Confessions were frequently written before the interrogation even began. The goal was never truth. The goal was a signature and a list of names. And here is a fact that most people never learn, and it fundamentally changes how you understand the Gestapo's power. The Gestapo had remarkably few actual officers. In a city like Düsseldorf, which had a population of 500,000 people, the entire Gestapo office employed fewer than 150 agents. And yet they controlled the city. They knew what was being said in homes, in cafes, in church halls. How? Because they didn't need to be everywhere. Their informants were everywhere. Denunciations, tips voluntarily given by ordinary civilians, provided the majority of the Gestapo's intelligence. A resentful neighbor, a jealous co-worker, a political rival, a frightened friend trying to protect themselves by sacrificing someone else. These people handed the Gestapo its cases, its arrests, its deportation orders. No evidence was required. A few confident words were enough to open a file. This is what the Gestapo truly understood about power. You do not need to control people directly if you can make people control each other. Parents warned their children never to repeat what was spoken at the dinner table. One innocent sentence repeated at school, overheard by the wrong teacher, could send an entire family to a concentration camp. Communities stopped trusting each other. Friendships became calculations. Silence became survival. The Gestapo turned society against itself, and Heydrich designed every mechanism of that process. On January 20th, 1942, just 4 months before his assassination, Reinhard Heydrich chaired one of the most consequential and chilling meetings in the history of the modern world, the Wannsee Conference. 15 senior Nazi officials gathered in a villa outside Berlin. The agenda: the coordination of the final solution to the Jewish question, the systematic extermination of every Jewish person in Europe. Heydrich ran that meeting. He presented the logistics. He allocated the responsibilities. He turned genocide into a bureaucratic action item. It is estimated that at the time of the Wannsee Conference, there were approximately 11 million Jewish people in Europe. Heydrich's machine was already working through that number, country by country, transport by transport, camp by camp. Without local collaboration, governments handing over citizens, police forces processing deportation papers, administrative offices stamping death warrants, the Gestapo could not have operated at that scale. But with it, the Holocaust became industrial. Heydrich was not just one evil man among many. He was the operational brain of the genocide, the man who made the paperwork match the killing. By 1941, the Czechoslovak government in exile operating from London had made a decision. Heydrich had to die. The operation was codenamed Anthropoid. It was authorized at the highest levels, approved personally by Winston Churchill and the British Chiefs of Staff. 2 soldiers were chosen, Jozef Gabčík a Slovak, and Jan Kubiš, a Czech. Both had escaped occupied Czechoslovakia and joined Allied forces. Both had been trained by Britain's Special Operations Executive. In December 1941, they parachuted into occupied Czechoslovakia in the dead of winter. For months they hid. Czech resistance members sheltered them, fed them, kept them alive, at enormous personal risk. A single denunciation would have ended the mission and sent everyone involved to a Gestapo cell. They studied Heydrich's routines. They discovered that the most powerful man in the protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia traveled through Prague in an open-top convertible with minimal protection. His confidence and his arrogance was the vulnerability. May 27, 1942. The hairpin bend at Holocaust Street. Gabčík stepped forward. The Sten gun jammed. Not a single bullet. In that moment, everything should have ended. But Kubiš did not hesitate. He threw the grenade. The blast that followed mortally wounded Heydrich, shrapnel from the car's own bodywork and horsehair upholstery penetrating deep into his abdomen and spleen. 8 days later, on June 4, 1942, Reinhard Heydrich, the man with the iron heart, the architect of the Holocaust, the head of the Gestapo's operational empire, was dead. He was the highest-ranking Nazi official to be assassinated during the entire war. The Nazi response was immediate, total, and savage. Hitler ordered reprisals on a scale designed to terrorize every occupied population on the continent into submission. The village of Lidice was selected, falsely linked to the assassins through fabricated intelligence. On June 10, 1942, German SS troops surrounded Lidice. Every man and boy over the age of 16 was shot on the spot. The women were deported to Ravensbrück concentration camp. The children, 88 of them, were taken, and most were gassed at Chomno extermination camp. The buildings were burned. The ruins were bulldozed. The earth was leveled. Lidice was erased from the map. A second village, Eslejaki, was destroyed completely. Hundreds of additional Czechs were executed in the weeks that followed. Gabčík, Kubiš, and 4 fellow paratroopers were eventually traced to their hiding place, the crypt beneath the Cathedral of St. Cyril and Methodius in Prague. On June 18, 1942, 800 SS soldiers surrounded the church. A battle lasting several hours followed. The paratroopers, massively outnumbered and running out of ammunition, fought until the end. They died rather than surrender. They killed the most dangerous man in Nazi Europe, and they paid for it with everything they had. When the war ended in 1945 and Allied forces liberated Europe, the Gestapo fell apart almost overnight. Its officers burned files, shed uniforms, and tried to vanish into the civilian population. At the Nuremberg trials, the Gestapo was formally declared a criminal organization. Senior officers were tried, convicted, and executed. Many were extradited to France, the Netherlands, Czechoslovakia, and Norway, the countries where their crimes were committed, and faced justice there. But in the streets, justice did not always wait for courtrooms. Survivors who walked out of prisons, resistance fighters who had watched their comrades die under torture, mothers who had lost children, when they came face to face with the men and women responsible, the interrogators, the informants, the collaborators. The years of accumulated grief, rage, and powerlessness discharged in ways that no institution could contain or fully judge. The Gestapo had ruled through fear, humiliation, and industrial cruelty. It had turned neighbors against neighbors and turned ordinary bureaucracy into an instrument of genocide. And at its strategic peak, guiding its entire operational architecture, was one man, a gifted musician, a disgraced naval officer, a husband and father, and the most dangerous intelligence chief the modern world had ever seen. Reinhard Heydrich, dead at 38, killed on a street corner by 2 men with 1 grenade and no backup plan. History does not always move in straight lines. Sometimes it turns on a hairpin bend. That is the full story, the real story, of the Gestapo, Reinhard Heydrich, and the mission that changed the war. If this video hit you the way it was meant to, do 3 things right now. Like this video, subscribe to WW2 Time Tales, and share this with someone who thinks they know World War II history, because I promise you, they don't know it like this. We upload new stories every week, stories that go deeper, hit harder, and stay with you longer than anything you'll find in a classroom. This is World War II Time Tales, and we'll see you in the next one.